we've talked about it in letters, and we've talked about it on the phone, but how you really feel about it, I don't really know.
What's your take on Cassavetes? 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 Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. Misogynist. Genius. What's your take on Cassavetes? What's your take on Cassavetes? What's your take on
Welcome to There's Sometimes a Buggy, Irresponsible Opinions About Classic Film, the internet's 165th most popular podcast in Sweden in the category of film and TV. I'm Elise.
I'm Dave. We're going to be talking about the films of Setsuko Hara this week. We're doing our Acteurist Oeuvre-View once again, talking about two films from 1951, Kurosawa's The Idiot and Ozu's Early Summer.
So until we were looking up the filmography of Setsuko Hara, I had no idea Kurosawa had made an adaptation of The Idiot.
I did know about this, but I had never seen it.
It was originally gigantically long.
Yes.
It was a pet project of his, and yeah, he made a massive, faithful... Well, that's not true. I just read an article online that said that this was a very, very faithful adaptation, unlike his Shakespeare adaptations, which are looser, but it's actually not true, because I just looked up the plot of The Idiot, which I have not read, and you have not read since you were a teenager, online, and he completely changed the ending.
Okay. I don't remember it well enough. Yeah, it felt like that character, the Prince Mishkin character, was faithfully rendered, at any rate. But yeah, the plot, I don't remember exactly what happened in the book.
So it was originally 265 minutes.
So 4.5 hour long film, and the version that we saw, the version that everyone has seen since one screening in 1951, is like 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it lost 100 minutes in a drastic edit.
Yeah, the one screening went badly and the studio panicked.
Yeah.
And the rest of the footage, as far as anyone knows, is lost. The surviving footage is very breezy. It did not seem overlong, despite the fact that it's still a very long movie. But I don't know, I didn't feel like it was a movie that would gain more from additional length.
Well, I think we would have got a lot more nuance and texture in the relationships between these different characters, these really weirdly intertwined characters.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that I hadn't read The Idiot and didn't know anything about it other than the fact that there was an epileptic main character that was a holy fool who represented the only good man in the world, which maybe did not encourage me to read it, but that's too bad.
It's a great book.
That it has that reputation because, and that's all anyone knows about it, because this was fascinating. Neither Dostoevsky nor Kurosawa are exactly known for their female characters, but these two female characters were amazing.
They were. Our cast, we've got regular Kurosawa star Toshiro Mifune. We also have Setsuko Hara, obviously, in a very change-of-pace type role.
Oh yeah, but how about
the idiot
the
himself?
Idiot character, here called Kamita.
Masayuki Mori.
Okay, do you have any idea how many great Japanese films this guy was in, showing an incredible range of characters? So he was the brother in Ball at the Anjo House.
Yeah, I remember him in that.
Very different character.
Yes.
He's the husband who gets involved with the ghost in Ugetsu.
Oh, right.
And he is the male lead of Floating Clouds.
Right.
And we're also going to see him again in Neruse's Daughters, Wives, and a Mother. Setsuko Hara is in that. He was also in one we haven't seen, Kinuyo Tanaka's Love Letter. Did you ever find out if you could get access to any of her films? She's Japan's, in addition to being Mizoguchi Muse, she was Japan's second female film director.
Yeah, I really want to see some of those.
They
we'll look
sound
into
like
it.
Interesting melodramas.
Yeah, they do.
And if we can find them with subtitles, or if you out there can find them with subtitles and tell us about that, we will definitely do a special subject on her sometime.
Yeah.
All right. So this was an amazing performance by him.
It was.
And I thought the good woman, the bourgeois woman, here called Ayeko, did you recognize that actress at all?
Yoshiko Kuga.
She is in Ozu's Equinox Flower. That's of her shortened filmography on Wikipedia. That is the film that I have seen. Toshiro Mifune, he kind of stuck out like a sore thumb for me in this movie. His acting style was so radically different. Like, nobody was acting naturalistically, and that's fine, but his was several degrees more artificial than everybody else.
That's what he's always like. Always.
Was he that way in the modern dress Kurosawa's The Stray Dog? And
he's pretty over the top in High-Low. He's a demented capitalist who is angry that people pushed him too far and took his son, remember?
Yeah,
He's
I don't know. I just felt like his style jived more with the style of the rest of the film in those ones, but whatever, your mileage may vary.
Well, he's supposed to be a larger-than-life character in this particular... I think his performance serves this role. It's true, he is very different from the other three, the way he's acting. He's a lot louder. I think that's how that character's supposed to be, so it kind of makes sense.
We'll differ on that. One thing is that in order to get a snowy, typically Russian-looking landscape, he set this...
in Hokkaido.
Northernmost island.
Very familiar to lovers of Wild Sheep Chase, which all takes place there, the novel by Murakami.
Dostoevsky think they're in St. Petersburg, so difference is that they're not in a metropolitan center, but apparently the...
Well, Sapporo is a big city.
Is it?
Yeah.
See, again, I'm perhaps being misled by this internet article that I read, but...
It's not Tokyo, but it's certainly not a small town.
The article I was reading made me feel like it was like a Bergman Island or something.
No, definitely not. Hokkaido is the northernmost island, but Sapporo is this metropolitan center. It's gigantic. But it's true, it does get an insane amount of snowfall. I kind of was looking it up. The first time I read Murakami, like that novel... This
is reminding me of a Guy Madden movie or something. It never stops snowing in this whole movie, except it's a lot more violent. Like the snow is blizzarding constantly.
Yeah, well, look up Hokkaido. Amazing feats of precipitation go on there. In the Murakami novel, Wild Sheep Chase, he gets snowed in at this cabin, impassable roads for the winter because of the incredible snowfall. You can't get up there, so he just has to stay there and listen to Percy Faith records and wait for ghosts to show up.
It works very well as a pathetic fallacy and looks great.
Yeah.
So the constant snowfall itself kind of makes the setting almost in a Wuthering Heights kind of way, a heightened setting for everything that makes the highly stylized performances stand out less than they would otherwise, I guess. It's all very non-naturalistic is what I'm struggling to say.
We first meet the two male characters on a train. They are headed north.
Yeah, they're strangers on a train, and it doesn't go well in this film either.
No. One guy...
crisscross, they exchange amulets.
Screams in a horrified manner in his sleep, and he's right next to Toshiro Mifune, who is a young aristocrat who's going home to reclaim his ancestral property now that his dad has died. He was sort of temporarily, not disinherited, but pushed aside and cut off for a while, at least, anyway, until his dad died. They strike up a friendship when the Screamer announces that he was driven insane by this terrible experience where he was sentenced to death as a war criminal, and then right before the gunshots were about to be fired, they reprieved him and realized that they had the wrong man.
So something this internet article did point out, which was on Little White Lies site, how the film has recontextualized the novel for post-war Japan.
Yeah, and works perfectly.
I don't think the epilepsy has been brought on by war traumas in Dostoevsky's novel.
Well, Dostoevsky did have epilepsy.
Yeah.
So he would bring that
Well, I don't think for one thing you can bring on epilepsy by war trauma.
No, obviously
so
not.
This doesn't make a lot of sense, this epileptic dementia with which he's been diagnosed, but we'll just go with it. Seems more like PTSD, combined with epilepsy perhaps.
Because he does have a couple of seizures.
Yeah.
He says that he doesn't really remember much, or he feels very cut off from everything that happened in his life before this moment where he was reprieved.
I think at different times he has said that it was knowing that he was going to die that drove him mad, and also getting the reprieve that drove him mad. The whole scenario, kind of.
Standing there watching a bunch of other people die who probably didn't deserve it either, right? He certainly felt compassion for all of them.
So he's been terribly traumatized, and now he has been sort of reduced to a, Jennifer Jones in Love Letters state, where he is an innocent newborn babe who cannot help but simply express his emotions,
And
all of which are compassion.
Yes, he feels empathy for everyone. All people, all animals, everyone.
Now, you would think a character like this would be extraordinarily annoying, but somehow Masayuki Mori plays him in a way that is actually quite subtle.
Yeah. Now, he doesn't actually wind up...
The music is not subtle.
No.
But the performance is.
I don't think anyone thinks Kurosawa is subtle in general.
Nope. Nor here. Dostoevsky also not very subtle.
No, I guess not. Yeah, this was a very jarring pairing, I must say. No two filmmakers are further apart than Kurosawa and Ozu. It made a great double feature. The story, as it develops, winds up being not too dissimilar from something like The Razor's Edge. A person who, in this case, it's a different form of enlightenment that he's achieved, but he is kind of unambiguously on a higher plane than everyone else in terms of morality.
The kitschy music also made me think of Magnificent Obsession.
Right.
Although Cirque is making fun of that material, and Kurosawa is definitely not making fun of this material.
No. But the thing is, this wondrous compassion and approach to intersubjectivity, it doesn't wind up helping anyone.
No, that's true. Not him or anyone else.
No, it brings on,
you
even worse disasters.
Buñuel has treated the subject in different ways too. You can't be the only good person in the world. It just makes things worse.
Yeah, it's true. Makes the other people who are just regular humans feel terrible.
And they go crazy.
And they don't really know how to interact with you anyway, so...
No, they don't want to interact with you because they'll harm you.
Yeah, so that is really high-level analysis of the drift of this, and we're told it in text within a couple of minutes that the world is going to kill him.
I assumed that the heavy text at the beginning of the film was due to a lot of cuts, but who knows?
Yeah, it makes sense that that's what happened.
Yeah, so the three other central characters all pretty much fall in love with this guy.
Yes.
In what ways are they intertwined? Well, as soon as they get off the train, there's a woman in the window moment.
Yeah, there is.
Where they see a photograph of Setsuko Hara in a shop window in a highly artificial looking setting. And they just stand there, and we see them from within the perspective of the window, just staring at this photo for the longest time.
So this is the woman that Toshiro Mifune was in love with and got disinherited over because she is a woman of ill repute. She's the mistress of a rich man on a neighboring property. Her face is a scandal in the town or in the city.
But the idiot, when he sees her, comments on her unhappy eyes that mesmerize him.
Oh yeah, he just goes to pieces when he sees Setsuko Hara. He says that he feels her pain, falls in love with her, or becomes obsessed with her at any rate.
We learn there's more to this story of this kept woman, which is basically that she was sexually abused.
Yeah, she was enslaved from the time she was 14.
Novel obviously goes into a little more detail. She was orphaned and this man became her guardian and he started having sex with her, and by the time she's an adult, and we do see this in the movie as well, by the time she's an adult she's figured all this out and realizes she has been abused and exploited and is not very happy with him anymore.
No, and she hates herself.
Yes. So the movie is really about, and this is a subject of film that we have talked about a lot in this podcast, it's about cultural sexual insanity and guilt.
Yeah.
And the two female characters are absolutely consumed with this sexual guilt in different ways.
The parents of Ayoko are both important characters as well. The mother actually is also the mother in Early Summer.
Right.
And Tokyo Story. Although she's a much more assertive character in this one than in the Ozus.
Sure.
She's married to Takeshi Shimura.
She just sulks a lot in Early Summer.
Yeah. She's married to Takeshi Shimura. He's in, I think, every Kurosawa movie. Probably best known to me anyway, as the central figure in Ikuru.
Sure.
But yeah, he turns up everywhere. He's an excellent actor as well. He's an agent of this gross abuser in charge of the estate that Kameda is supposed to inherit, and At first, they're just not going to tell him about it because, for one, they can get away with not telling him, and two, they just figure, what's he going to do with it? He himself keeps telling everyone that he's not normal, and he knows that people think he's an oddball, and he doesn't know what he's going to do with his life, and he doesn't know how to interact with anyone. He's just doing his best.
Setsuko Hara, we should say, is very glamorously styled in this movie to be a sort of Dietrich/Garbo figure. This movie has nothing that I could link it to for her persona at all, except that it's just an acting part.
Yeah, it's an amazing performance.
It's a departure from her persona, for sure. It's a very powerful performance. I guess, I don't know if it was that same article that I read this in, probably, describing her as playing this character with an extraordinary amount of repressed rage. And I guess that actually does connect with her other characters. I think you could absolutely believe that there is a lot of repressed rage in her characters. You don't usually get to see it, though.
She doesn't smile once in this movie, I don't think. So that's a big difference.
Except when she's laughing madly, but then he films her from behind anyway.
Yeah, we never see her face when that laughter comes on. I don't think it's her laughing. It doesn't sound like it anyway. It sounds like superimposed crazy cackling.
Yeah, it is. It's cackling.
It's almost like a possession. It feels very disconnected from the embodied actress.
So the situation that is brewing here is that this gross molester is trying to get rid of her. He wants to do other things at this point, so he's trying to get rid of this woman whose life he's ruined, trying to pay this merchant to marry her. What's the merchant's name? Kayama. He's going to pay him, what was it?
600,000 yen.
Yeah, which is apparently a lot.
Kayama had a pre-existing relationship or potential relationship with Ayoko, who is Yoshiko Kuga's character. She is disgusted with him when word gets out.
She does make her an offer, a last-minute offer, that he will throw over this in order to marry her, but she refuses. We have been given a bit of text to tell us that her character is so straight-laced that it sometimes makes her mean.
Yes.
So that's what we have to go on.
Right away, Kameda is getting involved in all of this in weird ways. So Kayama asks him to bring a letter to Ayoko, even though they're all in the same house.
You know what? I actually have no idea how everybody's related to each other, or why they're all in the same house.
He's just visiting.
But why is he visiting them?
Because he works for her dad.
Why is the idiot visiting them?
Because they are the ones that are the trustees of his estate.
Why?
Because the dad is like a lawyer or something, right?
Oh, okay. Well, that would explain
of...
why I had no idea why everybody was in this household together.
Oh. Well, yeah, Takashi Shimura is either a lawyer or an agent or something. He runs affairs for the really rich man who was abusing Setsuko Hara, but he also is the trustee of Kameda's estate, and he's sort of just involved in all of these different legal issues, right? So that's
and Kameda, no one knows what to do with him, and he doesn't know what to do with himself, and he's just boarding with them, I guess.
Yeah, he's just floating around, trying to figure out what to do with himself with this gift of time that's been given to him.
It all comes to a head, well, the first head, on Setsuko Hara's birthday. She wears a nice Maria Casares in Ladies of the Bois de Boulogne, although she's a very different character. Nice black cloak for the whole film.
She looks very ominous at times.
Obviously the sort of possessed, torn apart, made crazy by sexual abuse and guilt. Obviously it made me think of Fire Walk With Me. Also Waterloo Bridge, a film that we did on this podcast.
That's right.
James Whale's version.
So this birthday party is supposed to be also kind of an announcement of the impending wedding, the $600,000 wedding, and handoff of the mistress to Kayama. But Kameda shows up at the party and ruins everything, or saves everyone from this terrible fate that was impending.
He said they get a different terrible fate.
Yeah, his clumsiness makes him knock over a priceless vase.
Well, he's already met her.
Oh, yeah.
Quite dramatically. He's already met her.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
And then there's a lot of tension in the scene between her and Kagama, because she's not taking kindly to being sold.
No, of course not.
The family is not treating her very nicely, including this stuck-up bitch of a daughter. Kamita sort of intervenes and, I don't know, just treats her kindly and looks into her soul and tells her that she's a good person and she can't get over it. But everything comes to a dramatic head in that scene as well, where somebody ends up slapping him. It's Kiyama, isn't it? And then everybody's very ashamed.
Toshiro Mifune says, this man is just a completely frail innocent. You can't hit him. Restores a sense of momentary sanity as people realize what they've done. Yeah, then the party, everything overflows again. Actually, Setsuko Hara attacks him at the party when she thinks he's mocking her by talking about her purity and goodness.
It's almost a little bit Ball at the Anjo House in that all of these dramatic scenes take place publicly at this party, and the guests are just literally standing around staring at the central players.
Yeah, the vase was pretty incredible, right? Because he breaks the vase, and the rich man is like, you blundering idiot! And Setsuko Hara says, you gave these vases to me, didn't you? Well, here goes another one. She smashes it deliberately, just to be in solidarity with Kameda.
Yeah.
And that's where, they seem to be very close together, but then when he starts to talk about his feelings about her, she thinks he's mocking her and attacks him.
He defends her to the room by saying that she is a pure soul or the purest woman he knows or something like that.
And they all laugh.
And that's what she thinks is
she
mocking.
laughs at herself being described that way as well and attacks him. But then she realizes, no, this guy actually does not have a satirical bone in his body. He's the James of this story, right? Like the Twin Peaks.
Oh dear. I hope not.
But a much better actor. And he's got more to do, so that's important.
Well, and she doesn't unlike Laura, she does not take offense at this attempt to rescue her.
Well, she does at first, and then, she quickly realizes, no, this guy, he really is as good as he seems to be.
But like Laura, at that crucial crossroads moment, she gets defensive of him and doesn't want to ruin his life by accepting his offer, basically, of marriage.
Yeah, it's terrible, right? Because it would probably be a good thing for her, or it might be.
Even the molester at this point admits, yes, I'm a piece of shit. I have done all of this, and I've also concealed the fact that Kamita has this ranch. So if the two of you want to go off to a ranch together, this can all be arranged. And it sounds like it's going to be...
No, that's not the molester that says that.
Yeah, he does say that. I'm a filthy, awful man.
Yeah, that's Shimura.
Oh, I guess it was just the context of calling himself a despicable, filthy man that made me think it was the molester.
Well, he's been working as the molester's agent.
Right.
So, yeah, he's filthy. And concealing this inheritance from Kameda. Yeah, he's been doing all kinds of shady things. But yes, he sees the light in this scene and wants to do something for him.
They could go off and have this pastoral future. But as Kameda realizes, Taiko can't allow herself to have any happiness any longer.
No, she feels like the best she deserves is hanging out with Toshiro Mifune's insane character, who hates her and loves her and is certainly not fun.
Well, initially he just loves her, although very violently, but once he realizes she can't love him, that's when he starts also hating her.
His feelings for her are not respectful ever. I mean, he does think of her as a low-class individual that got him into trouble with his dad, and he just finds her exciting. Or
I don't know. I didn't get any of that. He certainly thinks of her as a gorgeous possession.
Yeah, exactly.
But I didn't get any of the rest of that. He's basically already, well, he hasn't wrecked his life. He's wrecked his family relationship.
Yeah.
In order to have this woman. He's just obsessed with her. That's all. He's sexually obsessed with her.
Yes.
She takes his 1 million yen and decides to spite
everyone.
Well, everyone, but particularly Kiyama, by burning this up in front of him, because now he's not even going to get his 600,000. So she tosses it in a nice Kate Croy, made me want to see her play Kate Croy style, into the fire. This 1 million yen. That's my James reference for this episode.
Well, this felt very Henry James, didn't it?
Yeah. Whoever thought Kurosawa and Henry James. Yeah, I mean, there's just a dramatic scene where everyone's, this one guy in particular is trying to get this large amount of money out of the fire before it burns, and she keeps shrieking at Kiyama to use his bare hands to take it if he wants it, because it belongs to him. He is so distraught watching this money burn and resisting the urge to do so that he actually passes out at the end of this.
He passes the test by passing out.
But then they do get the money out of the fire and he is given it.
So there's that. He has these lingering feelings for Ayoko, but Ayoko quickly passes over more into romantic possibility with Kameda.
What he sees in her, I have no idea.
Well, there's that scene where they have their walk in the woods early on where he actually opens up quite a lot about his experiences and his life.
Well, she's fascinated by him, that I get, but what does he see in her?
Something about her makes him talk about things that he doesn't talk about with anyone else. And I do feel like that must be part of what's been cut. There are more scenes between the two of them.
Maybe,
that
yeah.
feels like what's missing more than anything else.
Sure.
In this movie. Because most of their courtship happens through letters in the movie that we see. Not only letters from him, but letters from Setsuko Hara to Ayoko telling her, yeah, you should marry him. He's too good for me. I think I want to see him with you.
I want to see him happy. But what results from this is that Ayoko goes insane with jealousy, mainly as a result of not just jealousy. I mean, that's part of it. It's more that she feels, as she did initially with Hayama, but much more intensely now, she feels that she is being insulted, that a man could love a woman or be willing to marry a woman who's so low, and then also have feelings for her. She can't bear it.
She also feels like Setsuko Hara is playing mind games with her.
Well, that's a crazy thing to think, but that's part of her jealousy.
There is this deep entwinement between Kameda and Setsuko Hara, which is reflected in the letter. She's never met her. They've never actually seen each other.
Yeah.
But the letters show clearly that there is this incredible bond between them, and it is driving Setsuko Hara to desperately seek something better for him than marriage to her.
And she just keeps swinging back and forth. It's just driving her mad, and she can't rest, and she attacks him. She has these fits of attacking him all of the time.
Yeah.
And going back and forth between being gentle and loving and berating him for no reason. And I should say that and there's like a whole montage of that.
Yeah, that was great.
I should say that this character is very easy to understand. I don't think the movie is throwing her under the bus in any way, but she is a nasty bit of work.
Well, both women are projecting onto each other all kinds of qualities.
Right, that was reminding me of Kiss Me Stupid, but not in a nice way this time.
Yeah, well, there doesn't ever wind up being any kind of understanding between them. That's the difference.
Because, well, the way I was analyzing it is that it's because both of the women have been made psychotic by the sexual mores, the patriarchal sexual mores of their culture, but the good woman has been made more psychotic. Or not the good woman, the virtuous daughter.
Yeah. It makes sense to me, although they're both pretty off. That scene near the end shows us that anything can happen. Anyone could kill anyone in this movie, except for, of course, Kameda, who...
I don't know, I wondered about Kameda a few times. He got really obsessed with that knife.
No,
I even wondered about him.
I think that he's always worried about people killing themselves.
He would go in a fit of aberration, or each other. So I mean, we might as well talk about that big scene. It's a perfect example of... To me, it seemed that Ayako was... being perfectly sincere when she said that she wanted to meet this woman and thought that she might even end up liking her. But in her own way, she just ends up also being possessed as soon as she's actually in there. And all of these cultural mores have made her, as well as her jealousy, they all make her just react in this horrible way to Setsuko Hara.
But I feel like Setsuko Hara's problems are more prominent in that scene, right? She spends a lot of time talking to Toshiro Mifune before they get there.
Well, she's idealized this girl
Exactly.
who is everything, as she says, who is everything that I thought that I myself could have been, and if this terrible thing hadn't happened to me.
Right, and then she meets her, and she's just a thoughtless, regular girl, and she's like, well, this is not better than me. Why don't I just get Kameda then, if this is what normies are like.
She calls her a selfish princess or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's really incredible. This is an aspect of Setsuko Hara that we've never seen before. She looks so menacing. She's so much bigger than Ayoko.
The Garbo effect. Garbo can look like gigantically bigger than other women on screen. I don't know how. Joan Crawford can do it too. These were not, I don't think, particularly tall women, but...
Well, I don't really know how tall Setsuko Hara is.
Somehow imposing. A little bit of androgyny there.
Maybe, and maybe just the way it was shot, or maybe the actress playing Ayeko is really, really small. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is not how we're used to seeing Setsuko Hara, just advancing menacingly.
Completely wanted her to tear her apart.
But instead, she opts for a more subtle torture.
Yeah, tearing apart Kamita instead.
Demanding that he
choose between them.
Go back on this whole plan that even Setsuko Hara was pushing for, and she says, no, now I want you to marry me and we'll figure everything out.
And so we get almost a kind of
Van Helsing, come here.
Well, almost a kind of Gone to Earth scene, but with a male character being forced to choose between aspects of himself. I'm not sure if that's actually the way to look at these characters for him. I guess it's not really. But he can't choose between... I mean, why do you think he can't choose between... It's a pretty remarkable scene, first of all, with like endless back and forth shots. You can see how critics may have reacted to this movie as ridiculous. It's so incredibly over the top, but I loved it. He just looks back and forth between them for what feels like 10 minutes, and Setsuko Hara does have this...
She's doing a Bela Lugosi.
Except she's way more desperate. Like, he's filmed her for desperation. The other woman's face just looks kind of normal and can't really compete.
A really desperate power card here, and if it doesn't work, it's just going to be devastating. Because the problem with him is that he's beyond regular human emotion, so he really doesn't have romantic feelings anymore. That's all been knocked out of him, I think. He has this infinite pity and love of a kind, but it's the kind that extends to everyone, and he feels like both of these women need him equally, and he will hurt either one of them terribly if he chooses, and he doesn't know what to do.
Well, I don't think he thinks they need him equally. I think he knows Setsuko Hara needs him a lot more, but I think he's just like, he's made his commitment now, right? And he doesn't want to go back on that.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, at that point, it is something that Ayeko really needs, and it will be a terrible blow to her if she gets rejected now,
especially
this way.
For this whore, as she keeps saying.
She cuts it short by running off.
And also Setsuko Hara is not behaving ideally, as he keeps pointing out. He's like, you have to just understand it's just her terrible suffering that's making her act like this.
Yeah.
Please pity her too. Don't hate her.
And it's pretty amazing in this scene. For 20 minutes, Toshiro Mifune just sits in the background watching this. And this is the only...
he is the one... Well, I know both men knew how this was going to go, actually. They couldn't stop these women from this confrontation, but they both knew how this was going to end.
And the fact that he's such an insanely high-energy guy makes it all the more startling when he's just sitting there, taking it in like a spectator for all that time.
Sure,
and
but
of course he's going to go mental afterwards.
He kills her.
Yeah, it took a lot of effort, and he needed to let out the tension with a knife. And yeah, I mean, that part, obviously, it's not so much of a surprise when Kameda comes back to the apartment and finds she's not sleeping up in that bedroom. She's been stabbed to death.
Well, from the beginning, he's been projecting that he is likely to kill her at any time.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost killed Kameda as well.
Yes.
And their scenes are worth talking about.
Well, I mean, this is the whole other aspect of the film, that these two are like brothers.
Yeah, it doesn't involve Setsuko Hara at all, but there are some very interesting scenes between them, right? Like with the mother.
Well, he could have resolved it by killing Kameda, except that he loves him so much, and he realizes that every time he's actually in his presence.
Yeah, when Kameda is away, he says he hates him and wants to kill him because he's a terrible obstacle in his life. But whenever he gets close to him, he falls under his spell again, and he thinks of him as the most wonderful friend.
So he can even pacify this insane brute.
He's the only one that can, yeah. Basically just die together at that point.
Yeah, which I said was an invention. That's not how the novel...
How does the novel end from what you read?
The novel ends with the Akama character, Mifune,
Yeah.
going to Siberia or whatever, just like they do at the end of Brothers Karamazov.
Mishkin, does he die?
He goes mad.
He gets institutionalized?
Something. He
Okay,
goes mad.
that sounds, yeah.
More Dostoevskian than this
Yeah.
crazy motherfucking ending. This crazy gothic ending that's like...
It's more cathartic, obviously. These two guys die together in each other's embrace.
That would be a real anticlimactic ending to a movie, the Dostoevsky ending. But the scene where the horrible scene where he brings him to look at the dead body that is in the novel, very stylishly shot here with him being trapped behind the curtains. Stray Dogs, isn't it? That ends with the two men rolling around in the grass. I mean, this does seem like a very Kurosawa type ending. The two opposed brothers, violently opposed brothers dying in each other's embrace. And it's really, really mad.
Capital and labor destroy each other.
Quite an absorbing experience.
I guess we'll see if we get any other looks at Setsuko Hara in this kind of mode. It's, I guess, a little bit playing on the same kinds of strengths that she showed in Woman in the Typhoon area, but...
That was her other Dietrich type character.
There are dimensions to this character that, that movie is too frenetic to really get into. Her scenes are very quietly menacing a lot of the time. Without ever being unsympathetic, she's always very much someone that you care about and want something better for. And it's never going to happen, unfortunately. The sense of doom and impossibility lingers over all of this movie.
An interesting thing about her persona and the way it plays out in this character, and probably true to the Dostoevsky character just from me glancing at the plot, this character is always, as you say, kind of menacing and kind of imposing, but never unsympathetic. But there's never a moment where except intellectually, I didn't really share Kameda's pity for her. It's not a performance that has any pathos to it. Obvious pathos. And what I'm saying is that her persona has so much reserve to it that that's an interesting way to play a character like this who could be played for more obvious pathos.
True. But when she first walks in the door in that scene, it immediately sets an incredible tone. She is someone who is not to be trifled with, but also someone who does project deep hurt, I think. I mean, we've been prepared to think of her that way from the beginning because of that portrait scene. It really does all come together in that scene where she walks in and she kind of announces herself with this glare. It is somewhat akin to some of the looks that she was sporting in Woman in the Typhoon area, ordering him around and demanding that she be shown in and then asking him why he knows who she is and what's going on. It's just very assertive, but assertiveness coming from a place of insecurity, I think.
But that's more of a Bette Davis type of way to play a scene, to play a character of this type, where the dominant note is one of strength and assertiveness, and the sort of undertone is one of insecurity. And by the way, that's interesting because in a movie that's so batshit insane, that introduction of her in their first meeting is actually so subtle.
Yeah, it is.
In the characterization.
Well, I find almost all of her scenes are quite subtle.
Well, not the final showdown.
Not the final showdown, but even that, the fact that it makes me think of Dracula and Van Helsing, that is almost so over the top it becomes subtle again.
How does that work?
It will never leave my mind, I don't think. It's so crazy. On the other hand, it's so multivalent that you can project all kinds of ideas onto that scene. I don't feel like it means only one thing, and that's what I think of when I think of something that is unsubtle.
Okay, sure. Thinking about volume of acting.
Ah, okay. Anyway, it is something to see for Setsuko Hara completists. You can't ignore this one, even if it doesn't fit very well with any of the other aspects of her star persona that you see in other films.
And interestingly, and I don't know if this is because a lot was cut or not, despite the fact that she is neither the protagonist, nor does she get a ton of screen time in this version, she was the first billed actor.
Right, and I don't know if I'm just, hometown fan or what, but I do feel like she makes the strongest impression in the movie, although Masayuki Mori was incredible as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, he made a pretty strong impression on me.
Onward to Early Summer, the second of the Noriko trilogy by Yasujiro Ozu.
So this one barely has a plot.
No Ozu movies are heavily plot-driven.
Well, Late Spring kind of is. This one felt like Late Spring may be my very favorite Ozu, but it is based on a story. And this one is not. This is just written by him and his regular co-screenwriter, Koko Noda.
They used to get together and drink at an inn and eventually come up with a screenplay.
After much give and take and fighting and drinking and
passing out.
Rewriting. And rewriting while passed out. So yeah, this one felt more like Ozu, which is, it's very low-key. And plotless, episodic, and a comedy.
Incredible.
A comedy, but one that takes on, by tiny increments, more and more drama as it goes along.
And we've got a lot of the Ozu favorites in this film, of course, starting with Setsuko Hara, but also Chishiryu not playing her dad for a change. He is a dad.
Not playing an old guy. Not with his old guy makeup on. I could barely recognize him without it.
He's her brother in his 40s. So yeah, he's just playing his own looks at this point. We've also got Haruko Sugimara in an amazing role. Fumiko that's Kuniko Miyake. So she is the one who is playing the widow who the possibility of Chishiryu getting married again. That's her.
Oh, right, of course, yes.
And we also have Chieko Higashiyama, who is the mother.
Right.
In both this and Tokyo Story and The Idiot. These are actors that we're starting to get to know just by immersing ourselves even a little bit in Japanese cinema of the golden age. Real crop of great actors.
So I was saying early on watching this movie, it's like a Angela Shanalak movie in that I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out how everybody is related to each other. If you were from Japan, part of Japanese culture, I don't think you'd have as hard a time. You would probably assume, as I did anyway, that Setsuko Hara is living with her brother and not with her sister.
Right.
But she has a very close relationship with her sister-in-law. So everything takes place, even more so than Late Spring, everything takes place in this house.
Well, and at her office.
Yeah, but this house is a real character because the entire family lives there. Not many generations, 3, but all the generations are accounted for, and they all have their beautiful rooms. This house is just gorgeous.
A well-to-do family, fairly well-to-do anyway. Chishiryu is the patriarch, even though he is the son, and he's a doctor, so I guess he's doing all right. They're not wealthy, but they're living in the suburbs and they're doing well.
Well, yeah, he is the patriarch in that he is now presumably economically responsible.
Yeah,
for
he's
everybody.
running things. The dad says that,
Yeah.
Koichi is in charge here now.
Yeah. He's a patriarch who's constantly being undermined by children and wives and sisters.
Oh yeah, well his kids are a real problem. The post-war women, he's got some complaints about it, and they tell him, no, before the war we weren't acting normal. Now we're acting normal.
Well, that's what Setsuko Hara says.
Yeah.
She says men were too impudent for too long, and now women are just being normal.
Exactly.
Impudent like you. In terms of her persona, okay, so this character could not be more different than the first Noriko.
These Norikos are all different, all 3 of them.
But her mannerisms are the same, and again, her mannerisms are not like this in any movie except Ozu's.
That's
so
right.
It does make me think that, contrary to what Chishiryu had to say, she must have received some coaching in how to play.
Well, they worked it out between them
these
at the very
characters.
least, right? Yeah. This is a unique creation that an actor and an auteur work out together.
I mean, she does smile a lot in other movies that aren't directed by Kurosawa, but nowhere near as much as she does whenever she's playing Noriko.
Right. And a particular kind of smile.
A particular kind of smile where she says whatever the hell is on her mind through her teeth while grinning.
Yes.
Very, very passive-aggressive.
In this film, she is the unmarried daughter living with the brother and 2 nephews, her parents. She is helping out considerably. She's bringing in a salary. She works at an office, and she also helps with the kids to some extent.
As much as anybody can help with those kids.
Right. Those kids are unruly.
This is a comedy, but tonally, you don't know what to make of it a lot of the time, which is the tone of Ozu's comedy. You would be forgiven for thinking that he actually hates little boys.
I don't know. Those kids, it's really interesting, right? Because
But I'm not sure.
Yeah, it follows them around kind of lovingly, but they act like real little assholes, which I guess is not that far off the mark with a lot of kids. I mean, they're not properly socialized yet, and they just say things that are dreadful a lot of the time, but nobody takes it seriously, which is the really
No,
fun
it's almost
thing.
like, there are several moments in this movie that remind me of Meet Me in St. Louis. And one of them is that, like Tootie, these boys can say anything and people just laugh it off.
Yeah, I hate you, Grandpa.
Yeah, that little scene where Grandpa's buying love with candy, and as soon as the kid's got all the candy, he turns around and says, I hate you. And that's not enough. Then when Grandpa kind of poo-poos that, he's like, no, I really hate you.
Yeah, and Grandpa loves it. He thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah, but there's nothing to suggest this kid is kidding.
No, he's very deadpan.
And they seem to hate the older generation.
And they're being told what to do all the time and wash your face.
Well, they hate the old people who aren't even making them do anything, who are like being nice to them. But I mean,
it's all part of the power structure that's keeping these kids from playing with their train sets all day long.
Yeah, instead you have to hang out with these useless old lumps, basically, who don't even take the wrapper off the caramels. Like, what the hell? But he's
Great uncle.
He's got to be doing that to pull their leg. Eating these caramels with the wrappers on.
Yeah, he thinks it's funny.
Like, these are the kind of minute family interactions that Ozu and co-writer wanted to write, to put into these films.
No other film is going to give you these things. As with Late Spring, we do eventually come to the point where everyone is trying to get Setsuko Hara to get married.
Yeah, but there's a huge chorus of a family involved in this time.
At a
certain point they start talking about nothing else.
Yeah, and it actually starts though with her boss at work, who is the one that brings this suitor into play.
Her weird, gross boss.
Yeah.
Who makes sexual comments, not the usual kind of sexual comment, like on appearances, but just sex talk.
Yeah.
He just does inappropriate sex talk just like all the time.
He loves it. He does seem to get along swimmingly with both Setsuko Hara and her high school pal who helps her mother run this bar.
Yeah.
And, there are several scenes with Setsuko Hara and her high school chums. There's a group of 4 of them. 2 of them are married and 2 are not.
Much more than Late Spring, which has several, because she has a friend in that one.
She just has the one friend in that one. Yeah.
And there are a lot of scenes of women just talking to each other in this movie. And it's true, they only talk about marriage, but nobody talks about anything except marriage in this movie anyway.
Right, that's true. These are really interesting relationships, and you get a lot of different angles on the marriage problem. Even though, as you say, yes, it's true, that is the main subject for most people, except for train tracks. Those are also an important subject for the kids anyway. Model train tracks.
What really prompts it is when her friend comes over to the office and they're all bantering and they start talking about the upcoming wedding.
Yeah.
Of a friend of theirs, and then he's like, well, how old are you two? You're just feeling bitter because you're left behind. And
Setsuko Hara says, no, it's not that I can't get married, it's that I don't want to.
Yeah, I'll do it anytime I feel like it.
That's right.
She says that at some point.
Her objections to marriage are not the same as in Late Spring.
We don't know what they are.
In Late Spring, it's a lot clearer that she just loves hanging out with her dad.
By the end of this movie, it is clear that, like, the last image we see of her, and this is interesting, I was thinking about this because she is just joyfully happy throughout this whole movie, no matter what her marital status is. She just seems like a person who is delighted to be alive. But the last image we see of her is her sobbing because she has to leave her family.
Well, no, it's not only that. It's that her leaving there's a domino effect. Everything gets broken up. At the end of the film, you see she is off to Akita, which is near the northern end of Honshu, the big Japanese island. So not far from Hokkaido, just like a ferry ride across from Hokkaido. She's very far away from them. They're in the suburbs of Tokyo. And because she's leaving, the dynamics around the house are all changing, so the parents are gone too, right? They go to live with the uncle. That's why we see them looking out onto the wheat fields at the end. So
But why do they
there
have
are
to leave?
because she is helping, I guess, to maintain that household, and without her there, everything's going to change. That's why they're all talking so melancholically about we're all going our separate ways, right?
Right.
And she knows that. She knows that she was the glue keeping that multi-generational family unit together.
So it is quite tragic.
It is very tragic, but it's different. In Late Spring, you feel more like she was getting something deeply spiritually satisfying out of just hanging out with her dad. In this one, she is hesitating about getting married for a long time, and a lot of it does seem to have been about knowing that this family situation, this household situation, couldn't continue without her, but it wasn't the only thing in her life like it was in Late Spring.
No, definitely not. But I do still feel like this character, particularly the way she talks about this marriage that she's going to have, I feel like she is very happy in the situation she's already in with her family. And everybody is very happy with this situation.
Yeah, and they just ruin it by forcing her to start thinking about it. But on the other hand...
But I do believe that she will form another happy family situation.
Well, yeah, that guy is awesome. I like Kenichi.
Yeah, for sure, but she doesn't need to. That's the thing. There is no need for her to switch and form a different family situation except that, and this is what becomes increasingly interesting in these Ozu marriage movies, except that society calls for it and plot calls for it.
Yeah.
And they're related.
Her relationship with Haruko Sugimura actually is the most touching thing in this movie, right? Where they improvise this out of nowhere marriage plan where they're just talking on the eve of the departure for Akita.
Well, it's because
she becomes like the Shishu Ryu of this movie, right? Like the parental figure that is kind of the anchor of Setsuko Hara's life at the end.
Yeah, it's because this mother, well, among other things, this mother doesn't herself want to be torn away from everything that's familiar to her, and her son
who's a widower.
Right, he is also the patriarch, and so if he thinks this is good for his career, this is what they're going to do. He pretends to ask her how she feels about it, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
And afterwards, you see her. There's a shot of her, like, her mouth is moving like she's telling him off, but silently. She's really, really angry.
Yeah, well, he says, I know what you're saying. I'm used to this.
And then she comes up with this plan to save things for herself.
But she doesn't believe it will work. She just says it like,
well, that's
this
exactly
is my
why she says it.
Hail Mary wish. I guess part of her's hoping that somehow it will strike a chord with Setsuko Hara, but she can't possibly be thinking it's really going to happen.
Because clearly she's not satisfied to have nothing in her life except her son.
Right.
It's not that kind of relationship. But to have Setsuko Hara, that would be much better.
Well, we know it makes any household more fun to have Setsuko Hara in it, except in The Idiot.
Noriko seems to think that this man will be acceptable. She finds him comfortable. There's a whole discussion with her friend over whether or not this means that she's in love with him. And it's not really settled. No,
but you know what? The key scene between them is at that cafe.
Like a 30-second scene.
Yeah, but one of the big important touchstones there is that he was the best friend of her older brother who was killed in the war, right? We have that
We're
scene.
going all over the place with this movie. Do we want to progress?
No, we don't need to go
any other way.
No, this is the way to do it. A real melancholy gut punch out of nowhere, right? Where they're just talking about the other brother and the dad.
Do you mean the scene with the parents?
Yeah, the dad says, no, we're not going to see him again.
But that's much earlier. This is the first we hear of this brother, which is this conversation about the father, keeps saying we're not going to see him, and he says, no, the mother, she thinks he's still alive somewhere, but I know we're not going to see him. And the mother just keeps looking down in this melancholy way. Oh, the reason it comes up is because she mentions her daughter-in-law dying.
Yeah.
So that was a terrible, and just the way, again, she glances down, you know that was a terrible loss to her. She would like to have another delightful daughter-in-law, clearly.
So Kenichi was best friends with the brother, and he harks back to that when they're at the cafe. He says, I used to come here with him all the time. At that point, you see, like, obviously there was a strong bond between Noriko and her brother.
So you think it's just incest all over again? She's managed to reproduce her family in a marital form.
In the nicest way possible, yeah. I mean, it still feels very heartwarming, but But yeah, there's this echo of her older brother in this guy that is part of the appeal for sure.
Yeah.
And also he's a really good dad. He is a promising man in his profession, and he has better ideas about parenting than Shishiru, who is just flipping out all the time when he isn't shutting down and going away from the house to get away from those kids.
He's a real shell dad. He's a heavy in this movie, but he's such a light heavy that shows you the tone of the movie. The gravest things are handled with the utmost lightness. It's like the Ozu touch. It all starts with a dog on a beach.
It does. The Stranger's Return
the
dog.
random Vidor dog?
Yeah, the dog from the church scene. Reappears on the beach in Japan in 1951.
Where do you want to go next with all this? You were talking about the heavy father, so let's talk about those scenes with the little boys, these awful little boys, and the drama, their plot is that the older brother, and actually everybody forms a unit in this family, so, except for Shishiru.
He's always on the outside, which is why he's so angry.
So, the sister-in-laws form a unit.
Yeah.
And the parents form a unit. And the parents are the ones who make you think that sometimes these marriages can actually turn out okay, because they seem to quite enjoy each other. Then the little boys form a unit.
They look ahead, and I guess they look back, although we haven't seen the original version of the film that Good Morning was based on. But those kids seem very much like the kids that want a TV in Good Morning.
Yeah. And so the profoundest wish here is that the older brother wants more
train tracks.
And the big social event is for everyone to come over and bring their train tracks and make a big long track and run their trains and get sandwiches.
Exactly. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And when that happens, Shishiru leaves and goes to the bar.
Well, the other huge theme of this movie is food, which we talked about in our last, like when we were talking about late spring.
Shortcake.
Shortcake comes up again, but much more shortcake. And this time she freaking well eats it.
Delicious 900 yen shortcake.
She not only eats it, but she spends a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
Actually, no, she was buying it on behalf of the sister, and the sister then teases her into, forces her to pay half.
Yeah.
Because she's the economical housewife.
I love that when one kid stumbles out of bed
the
in the
adults
middle of the
hide
night,
the
they
shortcake.
hide it, because it's too expensive to waste on those little Philistines.
So this is the post-war situation where you can have good food again. And so what comes to a head with Shishirio is that these little brats, the worst tragedy they can imagine is not getting more train tracks.
Nobody ever said they were going to get them train tracks that I recall, but they...
No, because the parents kind of hate them.
Yeah. For some reason, they think a promise has been made that train tracks are coming, and when Shishirio puts a parcel down when he gets home after a long day...
Yeah, no, and that's just the interchange between them. He's just sitting there with his back to them, taking his shoes off, and they walk up and say kind of indifferently, "Hi, Dad," and he grunts, "Hi, Dad," grunt, and then they see the long package.
Yeah, they grab it, and they're like, the train tracks! He doesn't say, "It's not the train tracks, kids, relax." No, he just lets them run off with it and unwrap it. It takes a really long time to unwrap. Then they find a giant loaf of delicious-looking bread, and they start kicking it around the apartment because they are disgusted.
And I mean, if he's gonna freak out and hit his kids for some reason, at least you can understand this.
You don't kick food.
But then, as in Meet Me in St. Louis, this outburst becomes, Dad just becomes the villain.
Yep.
And the darkest moment arrives and the kids run away from home.
Yep.
Down the beach.
They do. Everyone lectures him on losing the love of his kids by acting like an asshole tyrant.
But they lecture him really gently. They're just kind of making little suggestions.
No, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you might want to cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
His friend that he plays checkers with tells him this. And he goes off and plays checkers to wait for them.
Neighborhood Watch is mobilized to find the kids. He just leaves and plays. Well, I don't know if it's checkers. It might be Go.
Oh, okay. Whatever. It looked like checkers.
He is really out of touch. He does get a great comedy scene where he keeps sort of peeking out from his sleeping chamber.
Yeah, which does make me think that he and his wife
sometimes they have fun.
They're able to get along.
Yeah.
But she does say later on, when she's having that scene on the beach with Setsuko Hara, she does say, "You've put a lot of thought into your marriage."
I didn't.
Yeah. I got married with no thought.
No, that is a great scene.
Also shows this incredible understanding, especially considering that this screenplay was written by two drunk old men,
Well, they're not that old at this point. They're in their 40s.
That's old.
If they're old, we're old.
We're old.
Okay.
And drinking all the time makes you older. Considering this was written by two drunk middle-aged men, they show a remarkable understanding of the importance of female bonds.
Sure.
There's also that scene, and again, it's all very subtly done, just barely, these notes are just barely hit, but there's that scene where they're waiting for, she and her other unmarried friend are waiting for their married friend, and she doesn't show up. And Setsuko Hara just comments, "It's sad, we were so close.
Everyone's going their separate ways now.
So close in high school, and now it's all going away." And that is what marriage does.
They don't even have Facebook.
Marriage is this cultural tragedy for everybody. It ruins your friendships, it ruins your families.
No, it's rough. You have to enter different orbits, and previous orbits decay and are left behind.
And that is
tragic every time.
And it is one of the themes, certainly, of the movie, is this passage of time. There's also the old people sitting around enjoying their Sunday, talking about how this is probably the last great moment of their lives. It's all going to be a bit downhill from here.
It can't get better than this. We can't get greedy.
That's the repeated theme of the movie. Greediness. How much happiness can you reasonably expect to have in life?
Yeah, and how much is just starting to hoard. And I guess obviously that's a theme of a lot of these Ozu domestic dramas. The zero-sum game of happiness. Who is going to lose out? Where is it going to be redistributed? It's a 2.5-hour movie. It just glides along and so much happens, but obviously all of it very low-key, unless you count like kicking bread as...
And not getting train track.
There's a little uproar there, but still.
I mean, the thing is I was trying to think how to feel about the drama that takes place for the kids, because everybody gets their sort of plot and their drama. I mean, you are in a pretty lucky position if you grew up and you're a middle-class child, and this is kind of the worst thing that can happen to you, and I could relate to that. You know, if my father had failed to bring me the next issue of my comic book that I'd been following, all hell could have broken loose.
Well, yeah, but there was actually an unspoken, or maybe spoken, arrangement between you and your dad, unlike these kids who just imagined that train tracks were coming.
Well, maybe they imagined that they had decent parents.
They have a bunch of train tracks. They just keep wanting more.
That's the problem. But these are children who did live through the war, but I guess they weren't old enough
to they don't remember the war.
Really understand the hardship. So these are the post-war children.
Yeah. Good Morning is going to focus a lot more on these kinds of kids and give them more dimensions, I guess, but they're still pretty obnoxious. But the end, right, like the family photo is really heartwarming, I find, and you know, they're well integrated into that, and they get to wear their caps.
But it's their last moment, all of them together.
Well, it is, yeah. That's all because Noriko's getting married. If she would have just stayed...
If they would have shut up, she would have stayed.
Exactly.
And again, I was going to say, this movie makes it even more apparent than Late Spring, because Late Spring has this sort of psychological justification for her not wanting to get married. But in this movie, it's obvious that there is no reason for her to get married except that they want to normalize her. They're obsessed with normalizing her.
Yeah.
But there's just this unruly element in the plot of this movie, and we have to make it, like, straighten it out.
Yeah.
Speaking of straightening out, there's that whole conversation
between her best friend and her boss
that could not have occurred in a Hollywood movie of 1951 of homosexuality. It's teasing, but it's blatant.
He asks if Noriko's ever been in love before, and the best the friend can think of is she loved watching Katharine Hepburn movies.
Yeah, she collected the sayings of Katharine Hepburn. Then, what's his face? The boss asks if Katharine Hepburn is queer.
Well, I think he's asking if Noriko is queer.
Either or.
Right.
And the friend...
And maybe you are too, because you're not married.
Takes a bit of offense. Or, you know, mock offense or something.
Yeah,
She's just being teased, but she knows it's not proper to talk this way. And he also does suggest that she and Noriko should make out.
Some sexual knowledge should be exchanged between them.
Probably physically.
But I do think it is kind of a lewd office environment, but it is presented quite pleasantly as well. Everyone seems to be having a good time over there, and that's another family that she is leaving behind as she embarks on this. And there is kind of a valedictory scene with Noriko and her boss as he looks out on Tokyo and says, "It's a pretty great town."
Yeah, and he asks,
wistfully,
would you ever have married me? And she just giggles.
I mean, he really...
She giggles a no. That's when she giggles, that's a negative.
Yeah, but he really appreciates her as much as he is gross as well. Like, he's gonna miss her, for sure.
Sure.
He's not just thinking of her as an object of teasing.
And it's fun because he's, unlike most men in Ozu movies, he's not in love with her.
No, I don't think so. He just really thinks she's a fun office companion and someone to joke around with.
They don't even have a goodbye with her and her friend.
Actual final scenes are, everyone's in their own zones, and she's just referred to. I wonder how Noriko's doing. It's the parents talking.
Yeah, so the marriage, again, is what is beyond the marriage is unimaginable.
Right.
They even look at a substitute bride going by through the wheat field and start imagining what her life's going to be, but we can't know.
And they tell her to wear warm clothes and really take care of herself. That way we are guaranteed to all see each other again. Otherwise, maybe we won't.
But that's kind of part of the theme, too. Watching that bride, mother of the family is watching that bride going by. The idea of life being a crapshoot of luck again.
Yeah.
And they say that we've done pretty well.
And the uncle is there in the background. He's just enjoying things, as he often does. He will eat the candies with the wrapper on. That's how he approaches life in general.
In terms of her persona, it's all over the place here. She says that she's a very competent working woman. Oh, no, this is the goodbye. The goodbye with her friend isn't very melancholy. They just start joking about how she's going to have to start talking like a rustic.
Yeah, that's right. That was great. We get a little dialect that is translated into kind of American slang.
Texan slang. They're going howdy and
yeah.
Stuff. This is the provinces, man.
Yeah, Tokyo, I guess, it's like Paris. Everywhere outside of Tokyo, you get accents that don't fall well upon the ears of the cosmopolitan.
This is a scene where, speaking of persona, Setsuko Hara says someone called her a pre-modern post-war woman?
Yeah, exactly. Pre-modern, post-war woman.
But we have seen in many ways that she is also a modern post-war woman, including her worship of Katharine Hepburn, particularly the most modern of American women.
Yeah, so in our first Noriko movie, we have Gary Cooper. In our second Noriko movie, we have Katharine Hepburn.
So, I mean, she is just all of these things. She is modern, she is traditional.
She does love kids. They talk about that. So she is, it's a plus.
Hard to know why, considering her interactions with these idiots.
Yeah, she's probably really eager to spend some time with kids that aren't those two kids. Is it Mutsumi, the name of the little girl?
Oh, right, we see a little bit of her, yeah.
She seems like a much better behaved little kid.
Well, she doesn't speak.
Right.
She's just playing with her doll all the time.
Yeah, I do feel like the movie leaves you with the sense that, at least in this movie, we know what her husband is like, and he seems like a really great guy. Whether she's deeply in love with him or not is a different question.
But, I mean,
the new family she is starting does seem like a worthy one.
Well, this is the thing. This is this whole conversation that she has with her friend, where her friend ends up nearly slapping her because she won't admit that she's in love with this guy. But I don't know, I read it as, you can read it as she is in love but she won't admit it, which is what the friend thinks, or you can read it as that is entirely her friend's projection and we don't know how she feels.
No, we don't. Now, the scene where she, after striking this bargain with the mom, she walks home and she encounters her husband to be on the street. He has no idea any of this has happened, and she just smiles at him and keeps walking.
No, the eros is between her and the mother.
Yeah, it's amazing.
They have made an agreement that they want to be in a relationship.
Yeah. Getting back to that writer that you found who said that she never projects competence as a career.
Blogger.
Yeah. I mean, that just seems so even more off base. I hate to keep going back to attacking that one guy.
That was a medical student. He when he watched that particular movie, Temptation, he didn't think she could project being a medical student.
Right.
Not independent enough.
Well, she seems very independent in this movie, doesn't she? You may not have seen Early Summer.
Well, there's this whole thing of, this movie is so plotless that you could say that the center of the movie is after she has made this decision and the family all discussing how she's made her own decision. I mean, typically in the history of the novel, particularly the English novel, a woman making her own decision about marriage is a very modern thing.
Well, Dorothea Brooke.
That's in the later phase where women make bad decisions.
Right.
In their freedom.
The suitor that is proposed for her by her boss and then seconded and thirded by Shishiru and the whole family, and they investigate him. Everyone's hiring detectives to investigate their prospective marriage partners. He is in his 40s, we're told, and when that comes out, everyone's a little bit crestfallen, and that's what actually puts Shishiru in his rage that eventuates in the
right. He
bread
lets
problem.
it slip that this guy is middle-aged, and everyone acts disappointed. Although later the mother is also sorry for Noriko when it's revealed that she's going to marry a man with a child.
Right. But at least he's a younger man.
Time.
He's in his 30s for sure, this Kenichi. He calls his wife an idiot. He calls his mother greedy because neither of them are thinking about the reality of Noriko's situation, which is that she's 28. She's not young either, he says. It's just time to get her married.
But also, this is part of the whole conversation with her friend, her final conversation with her friend, where she says the kind of modern woman she thought that Noriko was going to be was this Americanized, Westernized
yeah, speaking
woman.
English.
Yeah. And having a fridge full of Coca-Cola and living in the burbs and, having that kind of lifestyle. And this is the man that was going to give it to her.
A businessman, yeah, who presumably is doing a lot of business with American firms and the military maybe and that kind of thing.
So it's in that context that she is not a modern woman. But yeah, the whole movie is about defining what kind of woman is this woman. And she ends up being, like, with that negative capability that you talked about with her, she ends up being indefinable.
Yeah. Everyone says Ozu movies are all the same. These movies from the late spring
Everybody
period.
says that? What? Who says that?
They do. They're always saying it's the same plot over and over again. It's the variations that are in, but it's really not even the same. These are a lot of the same settings, but that's about it.
Well,
every single movie is not just a slight variation, very divergent approaches.
And in tone and everything else. But that's brilliant to have the idea that you can just take the premise, not even the plot, but the premise of a daughter who needs to get married, like a troubling daughter that needs to get married. And you can make anything with that. That's like saying every Jane Austen novel is the same because it's all about a woman who gets married.
Exactly. No, this movie is so different in every way from Late Spring and Tokyo Story again. Well, I guess everyone does think of that one as slightly different. I guess that's why it always gets singled out and put on the top 10 lists. I don't think it's any greater than the other two Noriko films. These are all incredible movies.
Well, this one is remarkable for its plotlessness. I mean that as a compliment. Often critics do have trouble if they can't identify a heavy theme to a movie, let alone a plot.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate because just spending time with this version of Noriko and all of the people in her life is good enough for me.
Portrait of this family, and that's why I say that the house is such an important character.
Sure, it is.
Each with their own beautiful appointed place.
You want to live there.
In this house. Just the shots establish the importance of the aesthetics of the place,
A little technical note, the camera moves a lot in this film.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, early on, we were talking about it, how in Late Spring, static shots are broken up by a lot of shots of nature and also the motion of the train going by. That's Late Spring's visual theme. But in this movie, a lot of early scenes are broken up with fluid camera movements that are either very brief or more extended.
And we do get a lot of the traditional Ozu static shots, which are beautifully composed, and the camera does linger on rooms after people have left. All the things you expect from Ozu's visual aesthetic. But yeah, there are quite a few tracking shots in this movie.
I noticed that they disappeared later on, and maybe that actually gives an impression of momentum picking up.
Right.
But they're the most remarkable one that plot-wise and thematically doesn't make any sense. It's just there as a musical note, is after the kabuki performance. So this movie has a kabuki performance instead of a no performance.
Right.
Kabuki is, I don't know anything about kabuki or no, but my impression is that kabuki, I believe the term, it means something like bizarre.
Right.
So it's like a Baroque form of theater. And I can't really think of any analogy in Western culture for a type of theater or a type of entertainment you'd go to because it's weird. Can you?
Well, Commedia dell'arte is weird.
Yes, but does it advertise itself as such? It's just comedy.
I guess so.
Yeah, it's true. It's very, very stylized. Anyway, this is, it's like, maybe that's why Ozu thought that Japanese filmmakers could do von Sternberg, because it's that kind of going to an entertainment exactly because it's Baroque and exotic.
Right.
Anyway, after that performance that the old uncle goes to...
The uncle is the one that instigates it. He loves this.
Sure. But and that's when they have the conversation about Mr. Carrot.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
All the women...
Well, one of the school friends who's married has had a fight with her husband.
Right, and it's a really stupid fight, and she ends up feeding him carrots for days to get back at him for getting mad at her. And she's going to spend the night with a friend, but then they make up.
They make up, and she goes back home, and, her friends are kind of crushed, because it was a little opportunity to go back to the old slumber party days, and it gets kiboshed so quickly.
And this is all happening, I guess, at the bar while he's at the Kabuki theater.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's happening at the same time. Anyway, and afterwards she says she has to leave and go pick him up. And then we just get a panning shot of the empty theater seats afterwards.
Yep, beautiful.
So there's a lot of motion to suggest a sort of melancholy passage of time, initially, drawing out the length of the scenes even. But then, as I say, the momentum picks up later on.
Second half, it does have more of what you associate with the late Ozu style, which is all static shots that are matchless.
But I guess the point is that he is interested in these films having a particular tone and a particular rhythm, and that is achieved in ways that aren't just scene construction, even the quality of how they feel.
One thing I guess that we should talk about, because we've talked so much so far in our Setsuko Hara series about her relationships to her fathers in all of those movies, and in this one, it's very perfunctory. I don't know if we ever have any scenes just with her and her actual father.
Yeah, well, it often gets talked about as her Ozu character, her Noriko character, is defined in terms of her relationship to men always, even if it's not a husband. And in this movie, that is absolutely untrue. She's entirely defined by her relationships with women.
Yeah, exactly. Stepsister, it's her friends from school, and...
her prospective mother-in-law.
She becomes the most important one by the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Shishiryu is the older brother, trying to act like a father, but he doesn't have anything like the kind of relationship with her that she often does have with father figures in other movies.
Yeah, and there's this dead brother, but he's kind of just a strange trace in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. But he is a very important element of the story, even though he's only referenced twice.
So that is not true about Noriko.
No, this Noriko is very different from the previous Noriko, and then of course in Tokyo Story we're going to get our third Noriko, who is another case again.
She's not particularly defined in terms of exclusively relationships with men either, the third Noriko.
A little parting thought experiment. Try to imagine Toshiro Mifune in an Ozu movie. That I really can't imagine.
I could see Shishiryu being in a Kurosawa movie.
Well, he could have played Ikuru.
Exactly. In fact, in my mind, he does.
I know, he's totally different, but it is a kind of Chishiryu type part, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there would not be any place for someone with Toshiro Mifune's acting style in an Ozu film.
Well, no, that's not true. Ozu has different styles. We just don't like the other ones as much. There was one of his most famous films, Floating Weeds.
Well, I guess, he could have played the older actor.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just not quite as interested in that Ozu.
Alright, I guess that's it for this week. Do you want to talk about the Wilder movie that we saw?
Oh, I guess there's not that much to say about it. We watched 1, 2, 3. It was very good.
It was your first viewing?
Yeah.
James Cagney's...
And that's a remarkable. I can't believe that performance is remembered for James Cagney getting dementia and not being able to act anymore. That's ridiculous. That's like an insanely difficult part for any human being to play.
Well, no, I think that's an exaggeration. I think Cagney thought he was slowing down, and he realized
he wasn't.
Because he was having...
trouble doing elaborate monologues in every single scene.
Yeah, but anyway, he managed to do it, but he was just like, okay, that's it, I'm tired now, and he quit for quite a long time, although he did make a comeback in the 80s, briefly there. He's in Ragtime. It was his last big starring role, and it's a good way to go out, for sure.
Yeah, the movie was pretty good. I have no idea like what the context for this was, I can't imagine that there was any other movie in, what was this, 1961? Any other Hollywood movie criticizing American imperialism? Comedy, anyway.
Dr. Strangelove is right on the horizon, and things like that are around. There's definitely a sense of...
It's in the air, but this is very early. This is avant-garde. And they appear to get away with saying absolutely anything about America and implying anything about America, which is that corporate American culture is fascist.
Sure.
Literally fascist. Literally, they
well,
have
Horst Buchholz calls them fascists all the time.
And they have ex-fascists running the entire operation that we see in West Berlin. They seem to be able to get away with us saying all of these things because of some last-minute literal flag-waving.
Some pretty broad satire of Soviet operatives who are close cousins to the people that we meet in Ninochka, the trio of future defectors.
Right. Yeah, well, that gag is replayed.
Yeah.
The satire of Soviet East Berlin is actually incredibly gentle. More gentle than it probably deserved.
But, you know, you do get the sense that Wilder, he is putting some of his real thoughts in Horst Buchholz, I think.
Well,
he's someone who is a genuine leftist who is... He's disgusted with America and also disgusted with the Stalinist legacy. Even Khrushchev hasn't really changed things enough for a real leftist to get too enthusiastic about what's going on in the Soviet Union in the 60s.
No, and you have to imagine that Billy Wilder, who did very well in America and did have his life saved by an immigration officer in Mexico who allowed him to cross the border, had some affection for America as well, while realizing that it's
well, it's good politics.
Fascist imperialists.
Yeah, it's good politics to put as much love for America as you can in your movie that is criticizing America this stridently. Making fun of the Soviet Union, you know, no downside to that in terms of a Hollywood film. It just endears you to the people making the decisions and also to the audiences, I guess, which are looking for some criticism of the Soviets always.
And also endears you to Coca-Cola, apparently, that allowed themselves to be used in this movie.
Yeah, that is kind of the most intriguing aspect of this. How did Coca-Cola agree to be portrayed as a company that
is literally fascist?
Yeah, has these practices and has SS officers in high positions.
Again, I mean, it had to be the just throw in a little flag waving at the end, make it seem like the message was pro-American all along. I mean, what else can you imagine?
I mean, Coca-Cola comes off about as well as Dean Martin does in Kiss Me Stupid.
Yeah, they are analogous. They are both symbols of America at its worst.
I guess the audiences may have just said, no, we love Coke, we love Dean Martin, so whatever they're doing, it's fine, it's funny, and...
Oh, speaking of Dean Martin and Kiss Me Stupid and the censorship problems it experienced, I didn't look up whether 123 experienced censorship problems, but a couple of years after A Summer Place, Wilder and Diamond get very excited about being able to use the word pregnant, and it is not used in a way that is serious and respectful.
No.
Pregnant.
I actually really loved Pamela Tiffin's performance in this movie.
As the ditzy daughter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good performances. The wife was great, Arlene Francis, and also the secretary, who is apparently a big star in Europe. She's in La Religieuse as well.
Oh, strange.
Yes. Subject for further research. Horst Buchholz was funny too. Idealistic engineer.
The boyfriend.
Yeah.
He got a little too one note
Yeah.
as it went along, but he's initially very fun.
Yeah.
When he makes his discovery that everyone is corrupt, you know that he is certainly representing the idealistic side of Wilder and Diamond.
Yeah, and Trotskyists around the world. Our last few minutes this week, I think we should say a couple words about the great Olivia de Havilland.
Oh.
We got word that she died.
The last of the big studio stars to be alive.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, Marsha Hunt is still going, and she's over 100. She doesn't have the kind of name recognition that Olivia de Havilland had. I'm glad that we talked about her a little bit last week on our show.
You love Olivia de Havilland.
I do.
You really, really love Olivia de Havilland.
My favorite performance of hers might be the Strawberry Blonde.
Yeah.
Comes out of nowhere. You just don't expect that character to be as amazing an opportunity for Olivia de Havilland as it is. Also, of course, The Heiress. You can't go wrong with that.
Oh yeah, that's great. Incredible.
Hold Back the Dawn. the more I see it, the more I love her performance in that movie. It really wouldn't work without her working some magic with that character that seems like initially just the object of derision, right? She's sort of playing a silly schoolmarm, but she really invests that with some deep emotion and branches out a lot as she undergoes those kind of torturous mental experiences in that film.
Yeah, I'm just looking at her filmography. There are a lot of great movies in there, including all of her pairings with Errol Flynn, Fisha's Own. That's a great one. The
Mitchell Lyson.
Very crazy Snake Bit, stylistically as well. I find Olivia de Havilland to be a much stranger actress than she's generally given credit for being.
Well, you need look no further than the Strawberry Blonde for that.
She has a very weird presence on the screen. She has that way of standing there and staring. She gets a lot of just staring, the same as Joan Fontaine got out of raising one eyebrow. She has a very eccentric presence on the screen, and her roles, her best roles, well, not her best roles, her most famous roles are almost so familiar that I think people don't pay enough attention to the particularities of what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that eccentricity comes across later in role choices like The Heiress.
Yeah, well, of course, we should say, most people listening to this know, but she was instrumental in changing the way business was done in Hollywood, taking Warner Brothers to court, and ending the tyranny of the contract system.
Very interesting, too, that everyone talks about Bette Davis downplaying, well, not so much downplaying her looks, as getting a lot of mileage out of being an actress that wasn't beautiful in Hollywood terms. Olivia de Havilland was, but at a particular point in her career, around Gone with the Wind, she decided to have no vanity about the types of characters that she played, and she did get a broader range of roles after that.
Well, she had to fight for it, for sure.
Yeah.
To the point of being suspended. I think she's the most beautiful of the Hollywood actresses.
She could have continued with that, and she didn't want to continue with that.
No, she wanted to do other things. I guess a couple other movies I would want to put forward that don't get celebrated as much are Princess O'Rourke, which ultimately doesn't add up to being a great movie, but her performance in it is incredible. It's sort of almost a dry run for an Audrey Hepburn part. She's a princess in New York City. She takes too many tranquilizers and falls into the care of these pilots who don't know anything about her. Like, it really does seem like it had to have been an inspiration for Roman Holiday.
Sure.
Her performance in that movie is amazing. I do love The Dark Mirror as well, where she plays the twins.
A lot of people love that. I haven't seen it in a long time. I'd have to see it again.
I mean, she is so disturbing as the murderous twin. And then in the other role, she's just kind of playing her usual character.
Nice and mousy.
Yeah, she has some great scenes with herself in that movie. 104 is a good run, but it was bringing something to people's lives to just know that Olivia de Havilland was still alive and out there and riding her bicycle, even though she was in movies in the 1930s, and now we don't have that anymore, which is sad.
End of an era, end of a link to an era.
Well, next week, it's back to Hollywood Studios year by year. It's Warner Brothers. We're going to be talking about Babyface and Employee's Entrance.
Oh my word.
This was your proposed double feature, which I seconded heartily. It's going to be a Me Too episode.
Me Too extravaganza.
Yeah.
I don't know who's doing the Me Tooing in Babyface. We've got the Nietzschean Ubermensch version of career woman, working girl sexcapades, and then the hashtag Me Too version right up against each other.
Is this going to be our first Barbara Stanwyck film?
What? That's not possible.
I don't think we have talked about a Barbara Stanwyck movie yet.
Well, we're going to talk about a whole bunch because we're about to do all of the Stanwyck Capras.
Yep. But this will be a nice prelude to that as well, in a very different register. But no, I think this is going to be our first one.
Well, it's a great one.
And in Employee's Entrance, we're going to see the great Warren William, who I would want to do an actor series on, because he's
acting really, really awful.
He's one of my favorite actors, for sure.
Weinsteining shit up.
Yep, he's pretty nasty. So stay tuned for Warner Brothers 1933 next week.